Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Today, we are joined by Tommy Badeaux, a personal injury attorney and the founder of Badeaux Law Firm. Tommy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Adrian. I appreciate it.
Can you start off by telling us a little about yourself and a little bit about Badeaux Law Firm?
So about myself, I am born and raised in Cut Off, Louisiana. So from down the bay, as we call it, graduated from South Lafourche High School, then went on to go to the University of Louisiana. So I'm a proud Raging Cajun. Then moved to New Orleans to go to Loyola Law School. Since undergrad, I've pretty much worked in the bar business, funding my way through school. So started as a DJ, then became a bartender. Through that process, met my gorgeous wife. Now we've been married. It's going to be 9 years into the month. We have 3 amazing little boys. So family of 5. Badeaux Law kind of came about after law school. Just kind of found the job market a little hard to get into and break into without experience and stuff like that. So just kind of bit the bullet, started my own firm, had a small hiatus in there, went work for another local kind of well-known firm in the New Orleans metro area, and went back out on my own in 2021 after COVID. So that's kind of the short synopsis of what's going on.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your firm and the people that you help? What are some of the pain points that they're experiencing when they come to you?
So my firm is primarily based around personal injury. So the majority of our practice centers around car wrecks. We'll handle some slip and falls, things like that. We'll intake some workers' comp cases, though we don't usually handle those personally. I have a couple of good friends that those will get referred out to, and we do handle some maritime claims. But probably around 90 to 95% of my firm's centers around car wrecks and personal injury and victims like that.
And you yourself have personal experience with a pretty serious car wreck. Is that correct? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is true. So kind of why I started doing this. Well, one of the main reasons is it's over 10 years now. So in 2013, I was in a really bad car wreck. I was working an event during Essence Fest in the summer of 2013. We were leaving work that morning, coming home, and we were on I-10. We got rear-ended by a driver who was under the influence. He was going 103 and clipped into the back of us on the Clearview exit, and we flipped over several times. I was ejected from the vehicle. Basically, broke my neck, broke my arm, had split my head open, whole bunch of stitches, staples in my head, the whole 9 yards. So had like a bruised lung and things like that. So really insane personal injury story myself. And that whole process, going through it myself and kind of seeing how insurance companies treated injured victims, just kind of motivated me to want to help out people who were in my shoes, because I think it offers me a unique perspective of, actually being in my client's shoes more than any other lawyer.
Right. And I mean, do you think that gives you more compassion than the average lawyer for people who are now in a position you once were in? And can you maybe speak to the role that sort of compassion for your clients plays?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely offers a unique perspective, because you'll have personal injury lawyers are a dime a dozen, especially in this area. It's a really popular, field of law. And so I think it differentiates me because I have been there. I've been in the hospital. I've been in my client's shoes when they're helpless and they don't know where to turn. I mean, there was a point in time where I couldn't even give myself a bath. I had to get help from my now wife or my mother to, just do normal routine things for me. I couldn't move. And so I know what it's like to be laid up and to be helpless. And at the same time, while you're worried about your own physical condition, there's other parts of the claim going on, dealing with insurance companies where they're like either harassing you and trying to get information and you're just trying to recover, or rather they're just totally ignoring you and not offering you fair compensation for your injuries and things like that. So I guess the only positive part to my story was it wasn't my vehicle. So I didn't have to worry about that whole property damage aspect and, oh my God, how am I going to get, to and from work or things like that. Now, granted, my injury was more severe, so I couldn't do anything for a number of months. I was in a little C-collar neck brace
Oh,
for probably going on 6 months. Pretty much had to sleep upright for the first couple months. So yeah, it gives me a unique perspective into what my clients are going to, and it could be from just the more routine soft tissue type injuries up until the broken necks and surgical type injuries, because I know what that's like. And there's
right.
lawyers out there who will say all the right things and show you a whole bunch of shiny pictures and numbers, but they don't really know themselves what it's like to be personally injured. And for me, I think that offers me a unique insight into my client's case.
Right. Well, and you mentioned, this aspect of after people go through something like this, having to deal with the insurance companies. And I was wondering if you could kind of highlight for us what are some mistakes that people make when dealing with the insurance companies?
So some of the most common mistakes people make when dealing with car wrecks, and so let's, if we're going to talk specifically about car wrecks, because obviously you deal with insurance, and a lot of people in the area are familiar with it now because of property damage claims with IDA. So some of these might parallel that, but specifically when we're talking about a car wreck and dealing with insurance, people often do things incorrectly right at the scene. They'll start by saying things like, "Oh, I'm sorry," or "Oh, maybe the damage wasn't that bad," and they're not really thinking of the after effects or the ramifications of that. So the things might start. They won't call the police right away from the scene, and that kind of throws a wrench in liability investigation and things like that. They'll kind of be too trustworthy of the other party
Mm,
for whatever reason, and
right.
maybe just kind of agree to exchange information, not knowing that, hey, once that other person drives away from the scene, those stories could totally spin and totally change.
Right.
So I think in dealing with insurance, people are maybe just too trustworthy and just not really thinking. So they'll start off, by saying the little things like "I'm sorry" or "Oh, I'm not really hurt" to the police officer if they do come out, or when they're calling and the other person's insurance carrier is trying to investigate the claim, they aren't really prevalent, or they aren't really aware of what they're saying. And so
Right.
it's not really an interrogation like a police aspect, but anything you say can and will be used against you. So once you're giving a recorded statement, your little things that you're not really thinking of at that time, or another thing that people do incorrectly is they go straight to social media after a car wreck, and it's usually the same kind of thing. "We were in
Mm,
a bad situation today. Oh, thank God. It could have been so much worse. I'm not hurt. I walked away," thinking in their own
right.
head, "Oh, because I didn't break my neck and flip over 7 times and fly out of a vehicle, I'm okay.
Right.
I'm so blessed," and things like that. And people all chime in, and they're just not very aware. They're happy to be alive. They're happy not to be catastrophically hurt, but they're also not thinking of, hey, something might come out of this claim and something might actually be wrong with me. And I'm just giving the insurance company more ammo to devalue my claim from the get go. So I think that's really one of the main things that people don't understand when they're talking insurance is, as soon as that wreck occurs, insurance is stacked against you. Not only does the insurance company have adjusters who are trained to manipulate you and try to get you to say things, but they have teams of adjusters, teams of investigators. And then if you have to further get into litigation, things like that, they have their own lawyers who literally work only for that particular company, whether it be State Farm, Geico, things like that. So just people aren't mindful, they don't deal with this on a day-to-day basis, and they tend to be too trustworthy of insurance carriers. And I think that's the big downfall.
Well, and I can imagine a scenario, right, where your adrenaline out of coming off of coming out of an accident and walking away from it, right? I can imagine a scenario where your adrenaline is just so high in that moment that you're like, I'm fine, I'm fine. And then you wake up the next day and you can't move your neck and you want to make a claim and somebody goes, well, wait a minute, you said you were fine.
Exactly. And that's very common. So if it's not something that is inherently wrong, and if there's not a bone sticking out, or you can't physically move, or you're trapped in the vehicle and you don't need to go by an ambulance, you know, the adrenaline is pumping. And so I
Right.
tell a lot of clients, and a lot of my clients won't call me until 2 days after the fact. So usually that tends to be how the claims process is 24 to 36 hours, even 48 hours after the wreck, you'll start to maybe feel the after effects, because people, all the time are downplaying collisions, and they're using the term fender bender, or my big
Right.
thing is I hate when people say accident, because to me there are no accidents. If you're in a car wreck, it's because somebody or something did not do what they were supposed to. So whether it's they're on the phone, trying to send a text message and blowing through an intersection, or if a if a car manufacturer didn't make a car correctly and a wheel flies up, something has always going to cause that collision. So I just think, like, from the get-go, people have the wrong impression of what a car wreck and a collision really is. So they'll call it an accident, or they'll be apologetic, and they tend to downplay everything, and they think if I could get up and walk out my vehicle and I'm fine and I don't need to be taken away by an ambulance, then I'm not hurt. And that's
Right.
not true. Because exactly like you said, is a lot of times you won't know until the next day when you wake up and you're like, oh man, maybe I did get hit harder than I thought and I need to go get checked out. Well, maybe you've already succumbed to the insurance game and they've already got you to admit, I'm not hurt, I'm fine, I won't be seeking a doctor. Or even worse, sometimes they'll get to you right away and try to make you sign a rush release, which basically gives away your rights to your claim. They'll tell you everything you want to hear. Hey, hey, Adrian, we're so sorry about, the accident and what happened. We're going to get your car fixed and why don't you send us that medical bill? But in the meantime, we'll give you $2,000 in addition to your medicals. Just sign this. And with technology these days, that'll come in the form of, a DocuSign or something like that. And it's instant. It's on your phone. And once you sign that,
Right.
your claim's over. You got nothing. So you wake up a week later and you can't feel your arm. Well, too bad. You've signed that release and it's game over.
Right. Well, and I'm wondering, when you are talking to the insurance companies and dealing with the insurance companies on a client's behalf, is it a situation where your approach is generally the same no matter what the case, or are you having to sort of tailor craft your approach and strategy to the individual case?
So for the most part, they start off pretty similar.
Mhm.
And of course, it's just usually the first contact we'll have in insurance is just a straightforward letter of rep, which is almost verbatim every single time. And that's just simply, hey, you know, Adrian's hired me. I'm the lawyer assigned to this case. Please don't contact him at all regarding anything. Now,
Right.
occasionally we'll let them, reach out to you regarding your property damage, because obviously that's your own. Whatever you paid for your car and the value of your car has nothing to do with me. I don't believe I'm entitled to any fee off of, if your car is totally, if your car is just totaled, if it's a total loss, I don't think I should be getting any fee off of that. So we'll let them speak to you just about, hey, if it's not totaled, my car is, I want it to get repaired at this body shop. I need a rental for this days. But other than that, we literally tell them, hey, do not contact my client. Don't reference anything about the injuries. Everything has to come through us. So that's usually the how the initial contact with the insurance goes. From there, it might take a different tone just depending on the severity of the injury. So obviously, if somebody's severely injured, maybe we ramp up our efforts to kind of get forward, to the insurance company to say, hey, look, Adrian got in this wreck. He has a broken neck. We need to talk about what kind of policy this is, because a lot of people don't know this. Louisiana is a non-disclosure state. So you get in a wreck today with somebody from State Farm, we could be as nice as possible, say, hey, we represent Adrian. We need to know what the policy limits are. And State Farm
Right.
adjuster will, so many kind of laugh at us and say, well, that's great, but we don't have to tell you that. You know that. And so it's kind of a matter of how severe is the injury, and then will the insurance company kind of be cooperative and see what they're up against. And then every once in a while, they'll come to the forefront, hey, look, we're just letting you know we have a minimal policy on this file. Because sometimes
Right.
what happens is maybe there's multiple cars involved, maybe there's multiple claimants, and there's not enough insurance to divvy around. So sometimes they'll be proactive in coming out and say, because in Louisiana, minimums are 15-30. So they'll be like, oh, we're sorry to hear about your client. He has a broken neck, but all our driver has is 15. So, but for the most part, it's kind of routine letter of rep. Then from there, it'll depend on the circumstances of the wreck, like how many people are involved or what the severity of the injury is. But that's pretty much how we handle it.
Well, we spoke a little bit about, the mistakes that people make when dealing with the insurance companies right after an accident. But are there any other mistakes that people tend to make right after a car accident? And if so, how can they prevent those?
So some of the most common mistakes, especially here in New Orleans, is not calling the cops. And I kind of glossed on that earlier. Is if they think that it's the damage to their vehicle or maybe not severe enough, or we know the response time in New Orleans is not the greatest, so maybe they don't feel like waiting 3 hours to get that police report. They'll just kind of swap information, thinking that hey, this person's gonna do the right thing that just rear-ended me on the interstate. But we know that doesn't happen. So I think the number one mistake is people not calling the police. I guess there's some ways around that, so to speak, but it's always best because you want that police report. You want that officer who investigates the scene to place liability on that person that hit you. Because while it's not the end all be all, it's surely helpful when that person either receives a citation or at least gets mentioned in that report that, hey, we're placing Adrian at fault for rear-ending somebody else. So that's a big mistake, is not calling the police. Another mistake is not taking pictures of the scene itself, of the vehicle, because what happens is a lot of times people will leave the scene, they'll get out, act like everything's okay, and then they're getting back in their car and they're hightailing it out of there. So you want to make sure that not only you call the police, but after that, if you do exchange information, great, get pictures of that person's insurance card and license that they'll give it to you. Look, sometimes they won't be cooperative, so you need that cop, because that cop will get you all of that information for you. And it'll have everything that we need. Well, you need yourself to process the claim, or if you need to hire me or any other lawyer, all that information we'll need will be on that slip, and then we'll get the police report. I think another thing that people make the mistake of is not getting checked out medically, either soon enough or at all, because like I said, that goes back to the whole, I don't know if it's just the conservative nature of some of these areas in our state, but, oh, I'm fine, I'm not really hurt. And then they won't even follow up with an urgent care or their primary care provider or something like that. So look, I know not every injury warrants an ER trip. And I actually preach to my clients, like, unless you are severely hurt, don't get in the ambulance and don't go to the ER, because those are just, out the gate. Sometimes we have $10,000 in medical bills just off an ambulance ride, and an ER. So it's I'd rather you take a $25 Uber to your primary care doctor than a $2,000 Uber to the ER. And that's a big thing that I like to harp on. But you always want to get checked out, just because, and you kind of touched on this earlier, the adrenaline's pumping. You don't think anything's wrong with you, and you might not know till the next day, but don't downplay it. Don't wait forever, because that clock starts ticking. And as the longer you wait to seek treatment, the harder it gets to assert that injury claim with the insurance company. So I think those are the key mistakes that people don't make for whatever reason.
Now, this might be a loaded question, so I apologize if it is, but I'm always curious. You practice in Louisiana. Can you tell us just a little bit, just a brief overview of how practicing in Louisiana with the Napoleonic Code differs than, say, practicing in another state?
So there are a little, obviously we're the only state with that. And even in law school, when you enroll, you have to pick, do you want to do the civil law curriculum, which means you basically want to practice, the common law curriculum, which is essentially if you are not wanting to practice in Louisiana, just want to practice in every other state, or you go with the civil law curriculum, which is, hey, I'm going to school in Louisiana, I want to practice here. And so there are some changes and nuances, I guess, to the law, but for the most part, you'll really, there's no reciprocity. Like if you pass the bar exam in this state, you don't get an easier access to the bar in others, whereas other states do allow for that. But as far as like, I guess it's just the root of some of our local court rules and state court rules are kind of based on the Napoleonic Code. And I think it really only harps mostly on the property aspect and things like that, not so much as a tort. But it is a little different, just because we obviously do things way different than any other state, not only with the law, just with anything. We're just a different culture, we're a different type of people. So I do know this, a lot of times when we'll get clients maybe who are from here and gotten a wreck in another state, we'll be handling the claim, but obviously we can't file suit in those states, so we're not licensed. So for instance, like right now I have a case that's pending in Tennessee. And what happens is I have to contact local counsel in the county where that happened. Obviously, my client is still in Louisiana treating, doing everything here, but I have to, suit had to be filed. I had to be admitted there. It's an archaic Latin term. It's called pro hoc vice, which basically says I'm admitted for the purposes of that case only in Tennessee. But I have local counsel there who handles it for me, and that's commonplace. Not just it's all around the state. However, it gets a little fishy. I guess it's because people kind of have that general idea that you have, because of Napoleonic Code here, a lot of out-of-state lawyers are hesitant to get admitted here because they think
Right.
it's just that we do things totally different and totally backwards. But for the most part, it's similar in the way that at least tort claims are handled and how we do things. It's just a matter of the nuances of each local court may have different rules and state courts may have rules, but if it's federal court, it's kind of all similar to how things are done in other places.
So we've spoken a little bit about your practice, and now I want to speak a little bit about you. You started a law firm straight out of law school. What inspired that move?
Well,
And what were some of the challenges that came along with that?
it's still challenging. So what I did is obviously, growing up, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. It was basically from when I want to say second or third grade. I was just, I was getting good grades in school and growing up, we lived with my grandparents for a while, and I come from a family of commercial fishermen. So I was, born and raised on a trawl boat. That's things I was doing. And I don't know if it was just the manual labor aspect, but my grandpa would always say, hey, I want you to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so kind of grew up knowing like, all right, I'm going to veer to one of those paths. And then just long story short, my grandparents they each had cancer and passed away when I was young in my teens. And I just didn't, from there, I was just never liked hospitals. Like the only time I was ever like being in a hospital was when my kids were getting born. So just from there, I just was like, you know what, I'm gonna try the lawyer aspect, and went through undergrad and even high school, kind of venturing towards that career path. I'm actually majored in pre-law in undergrad. So kind of knew I wanted to do that. I thought I was just going to be a criminal attorney. I wanted to be criminal defense. I've seen all the movies. I still kind of watch them. I see the high profile criminal lawyers on Narcos and things like that. I'm like, that would be cool to do. Better Call Saul. That's kind of what I've modeled my whole brand and image after. I was like, that would be fun. But out of law school, I went job shadow. I job shadowed a criminal attorney for 6 months, kind of while I was putting out feelers, applying to some of these PI firms and things like that. And I just kind of got turned off by the field of criminal defense. I don't know what it was. I guess it was just the kind of work, the type of people I was representing, or the type of people I was seeing my mentor representing, and it just didn't sit right with me. And so obviously, I had just being in the accident that I did, being in the wreck, I was like, you know what? I think this is something that I could do. Obviously, because I have personal experience, and I think it's a different approach. And coming out of law school, we actually had once you pass the bar, there's a program now called Transition into Partnership. The state bar puts it on, and it's basically it wasn't I think it's actually mandatory now, but coming out, it was like the first year they did it was my year, and you basically sign up to follow along a lawyer, and you could like say, hey, I think this is what I want to do. Can you stick me with somebody who does this? Well, I just got so lucky that my mentor was Morris Bart. So that was like a shock for me because growing up, that kind of was one of those like, hey, I want to be Morris Bart when I grow up. But so it was actually kind of cool because here I am, a young guy fresh out of law school, just passed the bar, and I get to go kind of follow around Morris Bart's practice for a couple of months. Get to go to court hearings, get to sit in on depositions and things like that. So kind of learned a little bit, and I doubt he would even remember me today. But he kind of like paved the way. I was like, yeah, I kind of want to open my practice, and he's basically like, well, good luck, like you ain't competing with me. But it was just it was kind of challenging at first, but it was a matter of, hey, I'm tired of not being able to get jobs because I don't have experience. Because it was like a catch-22. You get to graduate at the top of your class, which look, I was not. But I think I had a different aspect and different value to offer in that I'm a people person. I'm just a common guy from down the bay. I worked in a bar, and I still say that. I'm still been a bar employee longer than I've been a lawyer. So I think I relate to people more. I think I have a better approach and how to grasp, concepts. So it was a struggle. And, like I said, I was finally getting to a point where I was like, look, I need to maybe expand or do something else. And right when my practice started to take off, we found out my wife was pregnant. So at that point, I was like, man, maybe I need to go somewhere where I have, steady income and benefits rather than eating what I kill on my own. In hindsight, maybe I wish I wouldn't have did that because like winding down my solo practice for 4 years and then like ramping it back up was a more challenging effect. We had COVID going on. So yeah, it is challenging, but it was just always a matter of I always wanted to work for myself and at least say, hey, I tried this, if I failed, I failed, but I was not gonna never try to hang my own shingle and put my name on a building. So
Right.
that's kind of what brought me here today. And then now it's even more challenging because I'm getting to the point where, do I stay where I'm at as a one-stop shop with just me and a paralegal and an office assistant, or do I go out and hire somebody else? And so that's kind of the evolving challenges of being a small, being a solo firm.
Well, you're not only helping people with your firm, you're also helping people in your local community. Is that correct? Can you tell us about some of the ways that you were involved in your local community?
So, obviously, a big part of my life, as I mentioned, was fishing. In commercial fishing, and then going fishing with my dad and my grandpa and things like that. So, what I do now is I tend to sponsor. There's a great rodeo that gets put on every year in Grand Isle. It's called the Blue Boot Rodeo. It's to raise prevention of childhood drowning. Because what happened, long story short, it was one of the family who originated it. They lost a child to childhood drowning. He drowned in a swimming pool a couple years ago at a family gathering. It was really tragic. And he just so happens to be a good friend of my family. And they put on a great rodeo. So what we do is we're one of the corporate sponsors for that event. And that's kind of trickled down to other rodeos back where I'm from. We tend to try to help out in the community, and they do all different things. They offer scholarships for colleges. They give out life vests to every kid who attends the rodeo, and there's just it's blown up into this huge thing where they just all the money that they raise is put back in the community for different things. So I'll sponsor different rodeos, things like that. Sports were big. They still kind of are, obviously now as a fan, but growing up played them. And so what I do is I tend to sponsor a lot of youth sports teams back home. So I sponsor the local high school, the junior highs, and then also the biddy organizations, because that's just, I think that youth athletics are one of the greatest teachers that you can do with anything. They teach you so much about winning. They teach you so much about losing and failure. They teach you how to work as a team, and they just, they teach you discipline and things like that. So I'm a big proponent of youth athletics. Sponsor, local, even in River Ridge, sponsor our local playground. And now transitioned, obviously I have my three boys are 7, 5, and 2. They're starting sports. So now transition into coaching. So kind of coached when I was younger, and now obviously I'm not back home to coach in those leagues, but kind of got drug into it, and I'm coaching now. Well, we're in soccer mode now. So I've coached basketball, football, baseball, and soccer, and we actually have 2 soccer games today. So I have 2 different teams. I'm coaching my 7 and 8 son at 5:30. Then I got to bring him home and bring my little kid back to the gym, my 5-year-old, to coach him at 7. So just fully entrenched in that, and also just some other small things. I'm involved in my kid's school. We're in the men's club. We do events that will give back and help out the school to make various purchases, whatever it is. But that's what kind of things that I do to help out the community when I can.
When you think back of all the people you've helped with your firm, when you think back on all the clients that you have helped, is there maybe a story that you could share with us, a story that stands out where you really saw a transformation in someone as a result of your help and guidance?
Meaning like a client that I've helped out and saw
Yes,
them.
just saw a positive result in, like a real positive change in, or a positive, can you share with us a story that really stands out in that way?
So I think the story that I would like to tell you is not final yet. It's a case I'm actually actively
Ah,
handling. uh,
that's fair.
but so essentially, and we're dealing with this right now. We're at the home stretch, but it's a case it's a case that stems from 2019. And what it was a horrible accident. The guy
Mm.
got destroyed got T-boned by a fire chief in a rural area in Terrebonne Parish, and
Oh, wow.
essentially he needed to have 2 shoulder surgeries, needs back surgery, just really, really got hurt.
Wow.
And so, going through that, what ended up happening is, just throughout the whole process, the insurance company was just lowballing him terribly. We tried everything. I was very upfront, like I told you about earlier, just trying to gauge, hey, this is serious. This is not your run of the mill guy trying to make a claim.
Right.
Got met with resistance from them. Uh, then finally filed suit. They still were trying to resolve it. They brought in their defense counsel, who continued this pattern of just terrible handling of the claim, lowballing it. And finally, we ended up having to try it. So we tried it in, I want to say May of 23, ended up getting a $1.6 million verdict. That got appealed. So we had to go to the Court of Appeal in 24. We won our process of appeal. And now we're back in the trial court trying to dictate, how much of the money goes where and all that. So, but just in the process of that, kind of seeing this client being at his lowest. But now as we're trying to, every little victory we've had along the way, just, seeing him at least perk up a little bit, or knowing, hey, this is going to be, my life has already changed, and I don't want to say ruined, but my life has drastically been made terrible because of what happened in this wreck. But just seeing the changes that we have made and the progress we've made to not only get him the treatment he needs, but we're going to be getting the money he needs, and hopefully giving him everything that we can to put the pieces back, to his life. And so that's what I always tell my clients is, look, my goal is to get you back to where you were pre-wreck. And if I can't do that, all that we can do is give you money to, I know it's not going to change the past, but it can hopefully at least make your future a little more enjoyable, whether that means getting all the medical treatment you need, or taking care of all these bills that are piling up from stuff, just from anything, whether it's, I can't cut my grass anymore like I used to. Well, here's the money that you need to pay these people to come and do the things that you were doing. And so that, that's what I try to stress upon my clients. And that's kind of what is going on here. So I think that's the one that sticks out now, just because obviously it's very fresh in my mind. And hopefully, we're hoping the next couple of weeks to be able to finally unpack all this and be done with it, and, get our client where it needs to be.
Well, Tommy, this has been an awesome conversation, and thank you so much for coming and being on the show. If anybody out there listening could use the help of your firm, where can the people find you?
So, the easiest way to get in touch with me is through the website. So it's www.badeauxlaw.com or bettercallbadeaux.com. I'm actually, I'm very active on all my socials. So I have a lot of clients who reach out to me, whether Facebook, Instagram, occasionally people message me on Twitter. I've got a client or two from there. So at Badeaux Law on Twitter, I'm pretty sure I'm at Better Call Badeaux on Instagram. And then my Facebook is just Law Office of Tommy J. Badeaux. So you could search me personally. You could also call or text New Orleans area 504-323-7777. Bayou region is 985-303-7777. So available on all the platforms and everything else.
Well, Tommy, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been an absolutely fascinating, awesome, interesting conversation. Thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for listening. This has been Partnerships for Profit presented by LeDuc Entertainment. Tommy, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.